Hi everyone, it's me, Spring the Fiber Enthusiast. Welcome to my channel. Today's tutorial is going to be a little bit long, but we are making this Christmas stocking. This Christmas stocking was done in a 3-weight yarn using the Harlequin stitch two-tone pattern to be our main section. So pulling from my tutorial on how to do this stitch pattern and adding it to the video to make the rest of this Christmas stocking. I also have done this Christmas stocking in a 4-weight yarn. It is entirely up to you whether or not you do it in a 3-weight or a 4-weight, but just so you can see, there is a huge size difference. But it can be done. That is up to you. Also, this is done in one single color way, just a variegated, and then this is done in 2 separate colors. So let's go ahead and get started working on our Christmas stocking. I hope that you enjoy. If you need a refresher from start to finish on how to do the Harlequin two-tone, you're more than welcome to jump back to that specific video, but just a heads up, I did pull from that tutorial video specifically to add into this video. So it'll seem familiar if you have already watched it because there are bits and pieces added at the beginning to go over this as basically a review. And then the main part of your heel, your foot, your toe, and the top. So I hope that you enjoy. I have my 41 chains started. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see where I'm working and what I'm up to. All right. So we're going to be working in the 5th chain from the hook. That loop does not count as anything. So we're going to count back 1, 2, 3, 4, and into that 5th one. I will be working in the bumps on the back, not into the front side of the chain, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 where my thumb is. So you just turn your work over, and we're going to begin by placing 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets all into that same chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so 3 double crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, chain 1 and 1, 2, and 3. Now let's go ahead and move on. When we work all them stitches in that chain, it kind of messes your chain up a little bit, so make sure when you start counting you don't skip over your very next chain. We're going to skip 3 chains and single crochet into the 4th. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to work that all the way to the end of your chain. You're going to skip the next 3 chains and place 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets into the next chain. So there's 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and 3 more. Then you're going to skip the next 3 chains and single crochet into the next. Go ahead and continue working down the side of your chain, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet. into the 4th. Go ahead and continue working this same repeat down your chain. Your very last chain will be a single crochet into that chain stitch. I will meet up with you at that point. Okay, so I've come down here to the end and I've got 4 stitches to the end, 4 chains to the end of my row here. I'm going to go in as if to a single crochet into this last stitch. I'm going to yarn over and pull a loop through, but I'm not going to complete that stitch. I want to bring in and introduce my second color. The reason I introduce my second color at this point is because it now will start the next row with the right color beginning. Now, if you so choose, you can cut your yarn, tie off, and go to the next color. That's completely up to you. I'm going to show you how I carry up the side of the project my yarn and work each of the colors. So this first row here is only half of a diamond. So we need to go ahead and change our colors. So I'm going to bring in my secondary color here. And now I just fold it in half over my hand and place a loop on my hook. Hold it good and tight and pull that loop through. That's all I do when I change colors, because eventually I weave in my end. And now to continue, I will hold all of this together. This tail I just pulled through. I'll hold it all together just so that way it's stable for me to continue working the next row, the very beginning of the next row. So row 2 begins with a chain 3 and turn your work. 1, 2, and 3. And as you can see, that now is 100% all on the next row. Okay, so turn your work over. We're now pretty stable here. I can let go of this tail and move on to the next part. The next part is we are going to work a 3 together double crochet cluster. And let me zoom in a little bit so you can watch this being done in case you haven't done this before. It will be seen as DC 3 TOG on a pattern. So that is double crochet 3 together. Let's go ahead and work through that. Yarn over, insert your hook into that first double crochet stitch. You're skipping that end single crochet. We're going to go right into that double crochet stitch, yarn over and pull a loop up. Yarn over and only go through 2. So we're creating half of our double crochet. We're going to work that 2 more times. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through 2 loops only. 1 more time. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through 2 loops only. We now have 4 loops on our hook, the 3 stitches that we just worked and the loop from our chain. So now we're going to yarn over and go through all 4 loops. Chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're now going to do the same thing, only using 6 stitches instead of 3. So it will be seen in a pattern as DC 6 TOG, double crochet 6 together. We're going to skip this chain 1 space, yarn over and go into our next double crochet. yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go into our next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 only, yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 only. We're going to skip our single crochet here in the center and work over the next 3 double crochet stitches. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, following your single crochet, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. One more time, yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 loops only. Yarn over and you will pull through 7 loops now. Just like that, and you just pulled them all together into 1 stitch. Chain 7 and repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to jump over to our next little valley here and do the same thing. Double crochet 6 together. Then you're going to do it again and one more time, and at that point I will meet you to finish this last part of this row, which is row 2. So go ahead and work the next 3 double crochet 6 together, and I'll meet up with you at the end of the row. All right, so I've made it down to the end of the row here. I have my last chain 7 to do, and then we will work the last few stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The last, we're going to finish up similar to the way we started the row. Yarn over, and we're going to work these last 3 double crochets together. So skip your chain 1 space and work a double crochet 3 together. And now we're going to place a double crochet into the top of that turning chain at the end. Just like that. And this is what you have at the end of row 2. Let's begin row 3 with a chain 3 and turn your work. Once you have your chain 3 and have turned your work, we're going to be working into this little eye here where your chain is coming from, your very first stitch. So it's the grouping of all of those stitches together. You're going to place 3 double crochets into that little eyelet there. So there's 1, 2, and 3. See how they're all in that little eyelet directly across from the 3 that you work together. Okay, now we're going to jump over here to our chain 1 and our chain 7. We're actually going to single crochet over the top of both of them together. So insert your hook into that chain 1 space, going under the chain 1 and the chain 7, yarning over and pulling a loop through. So you see how it's captured both, and single crochet those together. Now we're going to work into our next eyelet, and we're going to work the series of 3 double crochet, chain 1, and 3 double crochet. So yarn over, go into the eye, which is where all of those are grouped together. Yarn over and double crochet. 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, and 3 more double crochets, all in that same little eyelet there. And now we're going to repeat. Go over here to your next chain 1 and chain 7 and single crochet around both of those chains. And you might have to adjust your tension a little bit and work it together. And now we'll work into this next little eyelet, placing 3 double crochets, chain 1 and 3 double crochets. This is your repeat, and I will meet up with you once I get close to the end to finish off this row. We're going to be changing colors again, and I will show you how to do that and finish up this row all in one. So there we have it. Okay, I'll meet up with you at the end of the row. All right, so we are coming to the end of row 3, where we're going to end up changing our yarn at the yarn color at the very end here. But before we do so, we need to finish this last little section up here by placing 3 double crochets into that little eyelet of the double crochet 3 together. Yeah, get your 3 double crochets in there. Now we're going to work a double crochet into the top of this turning chain down here, but do not complete it. We're only going to go halfway through completion of that double crochet. So just that bottom half, and there will be 2 loops left on your hook. Now we're going to switch colors back to our green. And in doing so, you want to make sure that you have plenty of give. So we're bringing it from this very beginning row all the way up to where we're at now, and yarning over and pulling through. But you want to make sure that you have plenty of stretch and it's not too tight, or one side of your project is going to be a lot smaller than the other side, because the other side has more give in it than if you were to cinch that down real tight. So just be cautious that you're giving yourself plenty of room. You don't want it too loose. And don't worry about the yarn going up the side, because we're just going to crochet over it when we do a border. All right, so let's go ahead and begin with row 4, which is a chain 4 in our next color. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then turn your work, and we're going to skip this chain, this double crochet at the end that we made, this little stitch here that we've chained off of, and we're going to start working our double crochet 6 together right off the bat. We're going to go into the very next stitch by yarning over and inserting our hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. We're going to work that across the next 5 double crochets, skipping that single crochet in the center. This is our repeat. So double crochet 6 together, skipping your single. and you will end up at your chain 1 space on your next little diamond here. You will have 7 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 7, chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we're going to skip over to our next little valley and do the same thing. Continue working all the way to the end here. And I'm going to meet up with you at our last double crochet 6 together. Okay, so we've come to the end of the row. We have done our last and final little cluster of double crochet 6 together. We're now going to chain 1, 2, and 3 and single crochet to the top of that turning chain. All right, this is how we should be looking at this point. You can start seeing the diamonds forming at that point. Now we're going to go ahead and start row 5. Row 5 is the last row of row repeats. So go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work over. Again, we're going to be working into the eyes of these groups here. And we're going to skip this single crochet. We're going to skip this chain 3 here. And we're going to work into that eye and work the second half of the diamond, if you will. So the bottom half is 1 row and the top half is a 2nd row. So go ahead and yarn over, and let's get those 3 double crochets, chain 1 and 3 double crochets into that eye. This will be your repeat across. Now we're back to our chain 1 and chain 7 where we single crochet them together. So in through the chain 1 space, under both the chain 1 and the chain 7, yarn over and pull up a loop, single crochet. And now you're going to go to your next eye and do 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. You're going to continue working that all the way down here towards the end where I will meet back up with you and we will finish this row 5 together. Okay, so continuing on with the two-tone harlequin stitch. We had started with a half a row and we end with a half a row, so that way we can sew them together and they match up with the rest of the pattern. Now for this particular pattern, I have done 28 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. And worked my way all the way around. And once I have come to that last row that is a half of a diamond, I went ahead and sewed the 2 ends together so that way they meet up nicely. Now what we're going to do is go to the end where you carried your yarn up the side. Now if you're doing this in one color, it's not that big of a deal, but this particular pattern that I'm making, I'm doing it in two-tone harlequin stitch. And now we're going to move on to the foot. The ankle part, I will be doing a afterthought heel, and so we're going to be skipping over the heel and working the foot, the toe, and then coming back and finishing the heel. And then we will come to the top and work the top, which is just a couple of rounds with a loop. Not too complicated. Pretty much a bunch of repeat rows and some decreases is all we're going to be doing from this point out. So go ahead and grab your yarn. I'm going to be starting right where I sewed them together, and I'm going to join there with a slip stitch and a chain 1. Go ahead and remove my stitch marker here. I'm going to single crochet back into that same exact spot, and I'm going to place my stitch marker here. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to place a stitch marker directly on the other side. I'm going to pull up a loop a little bit. I'm going to lay this flat so that way it lays in half. I'm going to place my other stitch marker directly on the other side. This is going to help me with getting 25 single crochets between each stitch marker, because you need a total of 50 single crochets all the way around. So this will help me get 25 on this side and 25 on that side, just to make it nice and smooth, even, well-balanced type situation. So I'm just going to simply work evenly distributing a total of 25 stitches, single crochets, to my next stitch marker. Then I'll turn my work over and I will work again 25 single crochets down the other side. Now in doing so, I'm going to be making sure that I am working over those strands that I carried up for changing color. I want to make sure that I work over them. So a good rule of thumb is for every double crochet, it's 2 single crochets. And for every single crochet is a single crochet. So just keep working up the side and evenly distributing 25 stitches between each of the stitch markers. Once you have your 50 single crochets, slip stitch to your first stitch, and I will meet back up with you. Okay, so once you have made it back to your beginning and you have slip stitched to your first stitch, you're going to chain 1 and half double crochet back into that same stitch and replace your stitch marker. And now we're going to work 1 full round of half double crochets, and I will meet back up with you. Okay, so now that you have made it all the way back around, we're going to slip stitch to the very first stitch, chain 1 and single crochet back into that same stitch. Replace your stitch marker. So with that being 1, we are now going to chain 24. So that will give us a total of 25 stitches. So go ahead and chain 24, and I will tell you what to do next. And just a side note, make sure that your chain is loose enough that you will be able to work back into it, because on the next round, we will be working into the chain, not around the chain. All right, once you have your 24, you're going to skip over 24 stitches. And if you've been keeping with the 50 stitch and your 2 stitch markers, you should be placing a single crochet where your stitch marker is on the opposite side to connect. What this is our chain to start working our foot and come back and work the heel. That's why you need to be able to work back into this chain. All right, so go ahead and continue working all the way around, slip stitch with single crochet. You should have 25 single crochets from that point to your next stitch marker. Slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet back into the same stitch, and then place 1 single crochet all the way around, and you should have 50 single crochets after your next round as well. I'm going to meet back up with you when I get to the chain part and show you how I work across the chain, so that way I can use part of the chain for the heel. Okay, so here I am back to my beginning stitch marker. I'm going to pull it out, slip stitch to that very first single crochet, chain 1 and single crochet back into that stitch and replace my stitch marker. This is just to ensure that I continue with my sides exactly where they need to be. Now what I'm going to do is work into, generally speaking, I work into the back bumps. But because I need to work both the heel and the foot, I'm going to be working into just half of that V on the front side of your chain. So I'll be working just like this, and you will have 24 single crochets across your chain, and your 25th will be your starting single crochet here. So this is counted as 1, and then continue with 24 across. You will then place your first of your second 25 single crochets right where your next stitch marker is. By the time you come back around to the beginning and slip stitch to the beginning, you should have a total of 50 single crochets. All right, so now we're back at the beginning, and let me just show you what we have here. I've got stitch marker holding my slip stitch to the beginning. You have your chain of 25, which now has 25 single crochets on it. Then you have 25 single crochets on the opposite side. Now we're going to start working half double crochets, and this will make it go a little bit easier. This right here in between your chain and this part will be our afterthought heel. We will come back to that once we have completed the foot and the toe. Then we'll come back and do the heel. All right, so I'm going to show you how I'm judging how far I want to continue with the foot before I start decreasing for the toe. So if I measure the length of my harlequin stitch section, I've got 7 inches. Well, I want to stop with the foot part 2 inches prior to the end of the harlequin. So from one side to the other is 7 inches. I'm going to stop my half double crochet rounds at 5 inches. Then I'm going to switch over to the white so I can do the toe, and I will do the toe decreases and finish off the foot and toe section. But I like to stop about 2 inches prior to the end, which actually would be the top of the foot or the top of the sock. Because if we look at it as if it was a sock, me adjust my camera. So if we look at this as if it was a sock, this would be, you know, your ankle and up. And when you fold a sock in half, or a stocking for this instance, when you fold it in half, the tip of the toe is going to come close to the top of this leg portion. So that's why I'm saying I want to stop making my foot rounds about 2 inches prior to the top of the leg here. We are going to put a little bit of a trim at the top so that way we can put our loop on it and kind of clean things up. But it's 7 inches from the top to this side of just the harlequin stitch. So I'm going to stop at 5 inches and pick up my white yarn to do the toe. So going back to the foot section here, I have slip stitched. I'm going to continue to keep my 50 stitches, my 50 stitch count all the way around. The only difference is now I'm going to chain 1 half double crochet back into that same stitch, replace my stitch marker, and all of the rounds all the way to where we switch to our toe yarn, the yarn that we're switching over to do the toe decreases, is going to be half double crochets. So just keep your 50 stitch count and place 1 half double crochet in every stitch all the way around for the next remaining rounds. Now that may depend on you and what size yarn you're using, as to how big your particular stocking is going to be. And I'll show you a for instance. This is, remember, a 3-weight. This is a worsted weight, a worsted 4. And so here we are, we just chained, and now we are working down the foot here all the way to the toe. And I was getting thin on white, so I switched back over early to the color, multicolored, variegated color yarn. But so if I take this and I fold it in half, my toe decreases actually start right here, which is about 2 inches from the top part of the harlequin stitch. Okay, and as you can see, we come back and finish our heel up. So that's what I mean by we can set our 3-weight, our worsted weight. Let me pull up a loop real quick, on top of our 3-weight on top of our worsted weight. Get all of them situated. So if I was to set this up right at the heel, you can see the size difference here. There is a dramatic size difference from my worsted weight on the bottom and my DK. But it's all going to turn out the same using the exact same stitch count. Just the overall size is going to be different. So go ahead and continue working half double crochet rounds, 50 stitch count each round, and I will meet back up with you when we have made it to 2 inches before you reach the top. That's why I'm not giving you a round count, because it will depend on the type of yarn, hook, your stitch, whether you're a tight crocheter or a loose crocheter. All of that will be dependent on you, as to how many rounds you're going to need to make it to 2 inches prior to reaching the end of your harlequin stitch. So when you fold it over it'll be 2 inches prior. Or you can just measure out this direction from your harlequin out how many ever inches you need, which in my case, I need a total of 5 inches of stitching past my harlequin. So continuing from our very first round out. Okay, so I have reached the end of the round. I went ahead and slip stitched to the first stitch, cut away from the ball, and it's ready to be crocheted over or sewn in or both. If you noticed, your stitch markers were moving as you were working in a diagonal of your heel instead of on the sides here. That's normal. That's because we were working in the round. And it causes a shift in your work. So what we're going to do next is we are going to get our stitch markers where we need them. So we need to make sure that because you should still have 50 stitch count. We need to make sure that there's 25 on one side and 25 on the other, placing our stitch markers on either side of the heel. So if I turn this over and you lay it flat, you can see, where your heel is going to be. You're going to want to lay that nice and flat. Make sure everything matches up nice and evenly. And then you're going to pick a side and place a stitch marker. Just pick a stitch on one side and now counting the stitch marker as 1, count 25 stitches to the opposite side. On the 26th stitch, place your new stitch marker and count it as 1. You will then flip your work over and make sure that there is 25 stitches starting with your stitch marker across to the next stitch marker. Go ahead and do that now, and I will meet back up with you. Okay, once you have done that, we're now going to join our color for our toe. And I'm actually going to open this up so that way the stitch markers are directly across from each other for this moment. Now I'm going to go ahead and place a slip knot on my hook. And I'm going to remove my stitch marker because this is going to be my starting spot, is into that. I'm going to pull up a loop and pull through both and replace my stitch marker. Okay, where your stitch marker is where you're going to have a single stitch. On either side of your stitch markers, we're going to be decreasing 2 stitches together. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert it into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through all 3 loops that were on your hook. You now have turned that stitch into 1. Work 1 single crochet into the next several stitches until you have reached 2 before your next stitch marker. At that point, you will work 2 together. Then place a single crochet into where your stitch marker is. I will meet up with you at that stitch marker. Okay, so here I am at my next stitch marker. I'm just going to remove the stitch marker, place a single crochet, and then replace my stitch marker back into that same place. Now I'm simply going to do a 2 together decrease on the opposite side of the stitch marker. And now I'm going to work all the way to 2 before my next stitch marker. That's where I will do my next decrease. So I'm going to work 1 single crochet all the way to 2 before my next stitch marker. I will be working over my green little tail from working the foot of the stocking. So just carrying that tail along with me as I single crochet across these stitches. Now what has happened is you are decreasing 2 stitches between each set of stitch markers. So a total of 4 stitch decrease per single crochet round. So as you see, I'm just carrying that tail along with me and single crocheting over the top of it as I go. And I'm going to work all the way to 2 before my next stitch marker. And at that point, I will do a 2 together decrease, which is where I'm at now. So 2 together. Just like that. All right, now I'm going to remove my stitch marker from my beginning stitch. I'm going to slip stitch to that stitch. Chain 1 and turn your work. Now we're going to place a half double crochet into that very first stitch. So a half double crochet. Once you have done that, you can replace your stitch marker into that half double crochet. That will signal you that that is the very first stitch. Now you're going to work a half double crochet round. We will not be decreasing at this time on the half double crochet round. So just work 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. Okay, once you have made it all the way around for your half double crochet round, you will have a total of 46 stitches. 23 stitches between your stitch markers. Chain 1 and turn your work. Place a single crochet back into your same stitch. Then replace your stitch marker. This will be a decreasing round. So on the single crochet round, you're working on the outside of the project. Those are your decreasing rounds. On the half double crochet rounds, you're working on the inside of your work. Those are crochet, half double crochet, every stitch all the way around, no decrease. We're going to continue working in that manner until we are down to a total of 22 stitches. When we're down to 22 stitches, you will have 11 stitches between each of your stitch markers. We will reconvene at that time and work the rest of the toe together. You will be alternating a half double crochet row, and a single crochet row. Your single crochet row is on the outside of the work and is a decreasing row. Your half double crochet row, round, is your crochet every stitch, half double crochet every stitch all the way around, no decreases. Remembering to turn your work back and forth to ensure that our sides stay put and we don't end up moving our decreases like we did when we were working in the round where our stitch markers were moving. All right, so go ahead and continue working that pattern 2-row repeat and work 11 more total rounds. So after you've reached 11 rounds, you should be at a total of 22 stitches, and then I'll be back. Okay, so on round one of your decreasing, we did a single crochet decreasing round. Then we turned our work and worked from the inside of the work, half double crochets every stitch. And that was your 2-round repeat. You were to repeat rounds 1 and 2 until you were down to 11 stitches between your stitch markers. Now we're going to remove the side of this stitch marker on the side opposite of your start and end. Just going to go ahead and remove that. So I've slip stitched to the beginning. I'm going to chain 1. Now I ended on round 13, which was a decreasing round. I'm going to go ahead and single crochet into this first stitch. Replace my stitch marker. Now we're going to do decreasing round and work in the round at this point. So 2 together in your next stitch, single crochet into the next, 2 together in your next, 2 stitches, and single in the next. So you're repeating this decrease all the way around. 2 together over your next 2 stitches, and then single crochet into the next. 2 together, and single into the next. 2 together, and single into the next. 2 together, and single into the next. 2 together, single into the next. Now you're going to jump over. That's just where you join together in the round, or prior, that's where you were joining together, slip stitching. So skip over that and slip stitch to that very first stitch. Now I'm going to remove the stitch marker at this point because I'm only doing 1 more round. This round I am going to do decrease all the way around. So I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to slip stitch into, or slip my hook into my next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and single crochet. That's pulling them 2 together. Now over the next 2, we're going to work them as a 2 together, single crochet. Again, the next 2 together, single crochet. Again, 2 together, single crochet, or single crochet two together, however you want to refer to that. Two together, single crochet, two together, and single crochet. And now we're just about back to our beginning here. Two together, and single crochet. And now we're going to two together one last time, which brings you right back to this side where we slip stitch together. And that is the end. Go ahead and cut away from your ball of yarn, leaving about 6 inches, roughly. It could be about 4 inches is probably plenty enough, but at least a good 6 inches, so that way we can sew the toe of this up. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 and pull my yarn through and tighten that chain 1 down onto that last two together single crochet. Then what I do is I'm going to be lacing up the eye of my needle, my darning needle, and then I'm going to take my hand and slide it up into the inside from the heel to the toe. And I'm using a blunt darning needle. I'm going to insert my darning needle in, grab it with my hand that's inside, and turn this sock inside out so that way I can get to the inside of this toe here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it all the way inside out so I can sew up these ends before I start on my afterthought heel. So all you're going to do is weave in this end by closing up your toe, and we're going to go straight across from where we're at and catch the other side. Then we're coming over the end and picking up the opposite side, and again working across. So we're just sewing, whipping that together, sewing the toe of this. Make sure that we're in the actual spot that we need to be in here. Yep, we are. So I'm just sewing like this. I'm going to put one down here. And then I'm just going to work back across because I have plenty of tail here. Work back across. You don't want to tighten it down too much. We want this to stay semi soft and round, not very pointy. So I'm just going to continue working this tail thread towards the other side. When I get down here to the other side, I'm going to catch these ends and pull my needle through, and I'm getting close to the end, so I'm just going to use the eye of the needle to go through my loop here. Before I tighten it down, I'm going to go and put my needle through that loop. That way I'm kind of making a knot there. And then I'm just going to weave the rest of this tail in to those loops that I just made. Hopefully this makes sense and you have been able to follow along with this toe. It's a little different than like making a regular sock. So just tie in a little, you know, knot here and there to finish off the end. Now, before we start on the heel, I will sew in the rest of these ends and cut off my tails, but I want to show you what the toe looks like from the opposite side at this point. So here's what it looks like from the very end. So similar to if you've ever worked a hat from the bottom up and you get to the top of the crown of the hat where you sew in the end of the hat together, you're doing basically the same exact thing. And we're keeping that nice curved effect to it. Now I'll just turn it over so that way you can see where we're at here. Just like that, and then we'll start working on the heel next. All right, let's do this heel. So the heel is going to be very simple, and you can use stitch markers if you'd like. You can work this however you wish. I'm going to show you my rule of thumb is I start my afterthought heel. For this particular situation, I'm going to start my heel 3 stitches back. Now I'm on the harlequin side of the heel, not the foot side. But it doesn't matter, either corner. And I'm going to go ahead and slip my yarn onto my hook, pull it through, chain 1, and then I'm going to single crochet back into that same stitch. Okay, the reason I started 3 stitches the opposite direction of the corner is because in each corner, the last 2 stitches and the first 2 stitches of the corner, you're going to do a crochet 2 together. So this, we are going to single crochet 2 together. Insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. Then we're going to go into the next stitch directly. Insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through all 3 loops on your hook. You just decreased by 1 stitch. Now we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then make sure you're using the next available stitch. This is not a stitch right here. This is just a strand where you have went around the corner. So it is not a stitch. You're going to reach over to your next stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and go through all 3. Now you're just simply going to single crochet all the way to the opposite corner. And you're going to do the same thing. 2 stitches before the corner, you're going to do a 2 together. Directly on the opposite side, 2 together. And then you're going to work your way all the way across, back to your first single crochet, and you will slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet into the same stitch. Now you're going to work 2 together again. And that is how the heel is worked. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out a little bit. And I'm going to start working my single crochets. Now, if you remember, both sides of your heel should have 25 stitches. So that's a good idea as to where you should be as you are crocheting around. Just don't forget that you have decreased 1 stitch on each end of both sides. So each round you're decreasing a total of 4 stitches, 2 stitches per side. So you're just going to continue working around your heel in the same fashion. 1 single crochet in every stitch to the last 2 stitches before your corner. Okay, I'm down to the last 2 stitches before the corner. I'm going to do 2 together, and then I'm going to jump the corner, and I'm going to do 2 together directly on the other side. And now I'm going to work all the way back over to my starting single crochet, slip stitch to it, and I will meet back up with you. All right, so I have made it back around. I've slip stitched to my very first single crochet, and now I'm going to single crochet 2 together using that very first stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, and go right into the very next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to now slip through all 3 of those loops on my hook. And I'm going to do the same thing to the next 2 stitches. Insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3. Now I'm going to just simply single crochet in every stitch until I get to 2 stitches before my corner. Then I will do 2 together twice, and again work around the back side of the heel here. So I'm just going to go ahead and work over to 2 stitches before my corner and do 2 together twice. And I'm going to meet back up with you at the beginning where we slip stitch to our very first stitch. All right, so I've made it all the way back around, and I've slip stitched to my very first stitch, which was a 2 together. So now I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch over to the next stitch, which is going to be 2 together. Once you've slip stitched over to the very next stitch, go ahead and chain 1, and we're going to work 2 together. So yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, and now single crochet them all together. So now we're on the opposite side of our heel here, because we have now slip stitched past the corner, and we are now on this side. So the main thing to remember when you're doing these heels like this is to make sure that you're working your decreases on either side of your corner. So if you lay it down flat, you can see very clearly where your corner is here. So you want to make sure that your decreases are on either side. So if you have to slip stitch one or forward or backwards to get that right decrease, then that's what you need to do. Now we're going to continue to work those decreases all the way down until we have approximately 8 or so stitches left on each side. So go ahead and continue working your decreases. The same thing on this side. You're going to work your decreases the same exact way on both sides of the heel. You're going to work a decrease on each side and then each side. All right, I'm going to go ahead and work down until I have about 8 stitches on each side left over, and I will meet back up with you and show you how to close this heel up. Okay, so if you have done your decreasing down each side and you are down to 8 stitches on either side, and your heel should match up with the decreases on your toe, down the side of your foot, up the heel. Now what we're going to do is cut a little bit of a tail, just enough to sew up this heel down here. And we're going to be doing that inside out. And again, the same as I did the toe, I will be turning the heel inside out, so that way I can sew it on the inside. So I'm just going to slip that through my last slipped stitch there. Then I'm going to stick my hand in, open it up, and take my blunt needle here, insert it in, grab hold of it with my other hand, and then roll this cuff down enough where I can pull that out. Make sure my decreases are even on both sides of the heel. If you need to completely turn it inside out, then please do so. Then what I will do is simply just sew up the end of this heel the same as I did for the toe. Just going through the stitches like such. Like that. And cut my tail. Now we're going to move on and work the very last part of this, which is the top. And the top is going to have a little loop to hang it by. So I'm going to go ahead and stop and adjust the camera angle, get us a little bit further away. But here is our heel, all said, all done. Okay, so we have our toe, our foot, our heel, up the leg, and now we're going to work the very top. The top is going to be worked 3 rounds. The first round is a single crochet round. And I'm just going to pick a spot somewhere along the way and pick up a stitch and slip my color in here. And now I'm using white again, and I'm going to single crochet back into that same spot. And you can use a stitch marker if you'd like to mark the beginning and end of your round. And now the idea here is to place approximately 50 stitches all the way around, just like we did down here around the bottom half of this harlequin stitch. You just want to get an approximate 50 stitches around, make it as pretty close to symmetrical as possible as you're working. You don't want too many, you know, in one little tiny itty bitty spot and make it really tight or bulky. So just kind of go around, and you can do it the same way we did the other end, where you split it in half, put a stitch marker on each side, and stitch 25. Turn it over and stitch 25. You can totally do that as well. I'm just going to count as I go, working 50 stitches all the way around, and I will meet back up with you once I have reached my stitch marker. Okay, so I've made it all the way around. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to that very first single crochet. And I'm going to chain 1 and single crochet back into that same stitch and replace my stitch marker. Now on this round is the round that we are going to make our chain to hang the stocking from. Now what I've done in the past is just lay my stocking down flat so that way it's exactly even, and then I will place a stitch marker right in that same area as where the crease matches up with the back of the stocking. And I'll just use a random stitch marker that is different than what I'm using for the start and finish of my round, because it's only going to be used for this one trip around. All right. So once again, you're going to work 1 single crochet in every single stitch all the way to where your stitch marker for your loop to hang the stocking where it is. So once you have reached that stitch marker, I'll meet up with you and show you what to do to complete this round. All right, so now I'm coming up. My next stitch is where I want to place my loop. I'm going to single crochet into that stitch just as we've been doing. Single crochet. Now I'm going to chain 15. 1, 2, 3, very loosely. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Without twisting it, I'm going to push it over so that way it doesn't twist. And I'm going to single crochet into the very next stitch. Then I'm just going to continue single crochet until I reach my stitch marker. Then I will slip stitch to that stitch, which is our beginning stitch. Okay, slip stitch to it, chain 1 and single crochet back into the same stitch, and move our stitch marker up to the next stitch. And again, all we're going to do is single crochet all the way around in every single stitch. When you come to the chain, you're going to single crochet into each chain stitch, not around the chain, but into each stitch. And then you're going to finish off with your last few single crochets, slip stitch to your very first stitch, and fasten off and sew in your ends. I'll be back when we get to this loop and we'll work through most of it together. All right, last little bit, everyone. Let's get those 15 single crochets around this 15 chain loop. Make sure that you're going into the chains. That way it gives it a nice clean look to it, not stitches sliding all over the place. So we're just gonna single crochet into every single stitch. Just like that. Once you have reached the other side of the loop, you're just going to finish off as you would if you were making a round without the loop. When we get here and slip stitch, I'll meet back up with you and we'll finish this off. All right, I am to my very last stitch. I'm just going to slip stitch to that beginning stitch. I'm going to chain 1 and cut off a tail for me to sew in, pull it through, and now just sew in the end, and that is it. You are done with this stocking. I hope that you have enjoyed the tutorial. I hope that you find it relatively easy to follow. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me and ask away, and we will figure it out together. As well as, if you make this, please send me a picture of your finished stocking, and I would love to share it with everybody else or you can share it in the Facebook group. All of my links are down below in the description box. Feel free to poke around a little bit more. And that is it. All we got to do is trim off that little bit, and that's it. All right, so here is our Christmas stocking. All done. Woohoo! You did it. You made it to the end. You did a harlequin stitch. You did an afterthought heel. You did some decreasing. All right, good job, everybody. I will see you in the next video. In the meantime, be blessed, be a blessing. Bye for now.